My name is Celine Carter. I was 22 the last time I sat at that table. Seat 5, left side, closest to the window. The cold spot. Every family dinner had one. That was always mine. The restaurant was upscale for our town. Linen napkins, brush gold accents, menu items that didn't list prices. My parents never came here unless they had a discount. But that night, they acted like regulars. My father made smug comments about the wine list. My mother eyed the waitstaff like they were hired help for her private event. And my younger sister, she made an entrance. Late, of course. Hair curled like it wasn't effortless, but meant to look like it was. Dressed tight. Laugh louder than necessary. She walked in like the party hadn't started until she arrived. Then I saw him, Daniel, the man I dated for 3 years. The man who told me he loved how grounded I was, how I made him feel human. The man who vanished 3 months earlier without a single call. He walked in behind her, holding her coat. No hesitation, no shame. He kissed her cheek as they sat, right in front of me, at the table I had reserved, because my mom asked me to plan something nice but affordable. I'd booked this place because I worked here. I knew the chef, the floor manager, the dishwasher who always hummed Sinatra. I'd spent 2 years polishing glasses in the back and learning wine pairings I couldn't afford. It was the first place that ever gave me a shot without asking where I went to school. I requested the table with the best view because I thought I'd be proud of something. I thought they'd see me as more than someone who lived in borrowed clothes and paid rent with tips. Instead, I watched them raise their glasses to the people who left me behind. "Don't make this weird," my mother said across the table, setting down her glass without looking at me. "People move on, Celine. Be grateful your sister's willing to let it go." Let it go? She stole the man who once promised to build a life with me. And they framed it like I was the one being difficult for breathing in the same space. My sister smiled, barely. It was the smile of someone who'd already won. Her hand was on his arm. Her nails sparkled when they brushed his collar like she owned it. Like she always deserved more than me. I sat through the first course in silence. I didn't eat. I just counted every time he laughed at something she said. It was the same laugh he gave me when we slow danced in my kitchen to a playlist I made him. He still had that playlist. I knew because I'd seen him online, listening to it weeks after he disappeared. "Water, miss?" a server asked. I looked up. It was Leo, the new hire. He recognized me but didn't say anything, just nodded like he saw the ghost sitting there. Because that's what I was, a ghost in the room where they decided my story ended. When dessert came, I stood up. "I'm not feeling well," I said. No one stood with me. No one offered to walk me out, not even Daniel. He barely glanced up. Outside, the air was cold. I didn't bring a jacket. I walked 3 blocks before I realized I was shaking. But I didn't turn back. I got home, sat in the dark, ate dry cereal with my fingers because I couldn't make myself care enough to find a spoon. Then I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and said one thing out loud. If this is who I am to them, then I will become someone else. Not to win him back, not to prove her wrong, but to become someone they couldn't rewrite. If I was just the waitress, then one day, I'd own the restaurant. I didn't speak to my family for 6 months after that dinner. No dramatic exit, no final speech, just silence. The kind that grows roots and starts to feel like safety. They didn't call. No one came by the apartment. No texts to ask how I was doing. It was like they'd always assumed I'd disappear. And when I did, it only confirmed what they already believed. I was forgettable. replaceable, background. The truth was, I didn't have time to fall apart. I was working 2 shifts, mornings in prep, evenings on the floor. I memorized wine lists between table turns and studied food costs in the back room when no one was watching. I shared a 2-bedroom with 3 roommates, 2 of whom I never actually saw. Rent was paid in cash and small favors, like covering someone's shift or picking up cigarettes for the manager. There were nights I'd come home with feet so swollen I had to sleep with them elevated. I kept my tips in a jar behind the cleaning supplies. It was labeled bourbon, so no one would steal it. I didn't have a plan. I had hunger, resentment, a steady fire that burned low but never out. I watched people with better teeth and richer parents skip over me for promotions. I watched my ex post photos with my sister at rooftop bars I couldn't afford to enter. I saw them vacation in places I used to dream of: Bali, Santorini, the Maldives. And I told myself one thing every time I felt small: I will never ask for a seat at their table again. I'll build my own. It was on one of those bitter January nights after closing shift when I first met him. He sat at table 12, ordered a neat scotch, didn't ask for the menu, just said, "Whatever the chef recommends." He was polite, not warm, wore a quiet kind of confidence, like someone who didn't need to prove he belonged. I didn't recognize him, but I knew the type. Clean cuffs, loafers with no scuffs, wristwatch too expensive to be flashy. Men like him didn't notice girls like me, but he noticed the food, the plating, the server timing, the way I cleared the plates. When he tipped, it was 40%. No comment, just folded bills and a business card. Lucas Marin, Group 5, Hospitality. I didn't know what it meant, not yet. But I kept the card in my wallet, not out of hope, just out of instinct. Some part of me knew people like him don't eat alone in places like this unless they're watching. And somehow, I had his attention. Lucas Marin returned the next week. Same table, same scotch, no guest. He didn't flirt, didn't linger. He read the room like a man who had built it. Subtle eye contact with the staff, small nods to the chef when a dish was plated right. He never pulled out a phone, just sat there, sharp, observant, and quiet. "You know who that is, right?" one of the sous chefs asked during cleanup. I didn't. Group 5. He's got equity in like 15 places, Michelin level. He only shows up when he's scouting. Scouting what? I asked. Talent, spaces, problems, people who work like it's life or death. I went back out with fresh water and a polite smile. Lucas looked up, nodded once, and said, "You handled that table with the toddler better than most managers I've seen." That was all. A sentence, not even a compliment, just an observation. But it hit harder than anything I'd heard in months, because it wasn't about looks, or being likable, or knowing someone from college. It was about the thing I'd built when no one else was watching. My control, my composure, my ability to move through chaos without leaving a trace. From that night on, he started coming in weekly. Different nights, different times, never announced. He never asked about my past, but he noticed my routines, how I rotated sections, when I jumped in to cover others, how I never let a glass sit empty. He once said, "You have a spine most people waste." I didn't respond, because what was I supposed to say? "Thank you for noticing the armor I welded from abandonment." Instead, I nodded and refilled his glass. Some nights, he stayed late, well past close. The GM started staying later too, trying to impress him. But Lucas never asked for more than a drink and the freedom to watch the system move. Eventually, he started inviting me to sit, not during service, After. No pressure. Just a seat, a drink, quiet questions. What would you change about this place? What's the worst kind of guest? What's your rule when you hire someone? I told him the truth, even when it didn't sound pretty, even when it made me seem bitter or tired or too aware of how restaurants chew through people. He never corrected me, he just listened, closely. Like he was learning something rare. I didn't know what he saw in me. I was 23, broke, betrayed, still haunted by the sound of my sister's laughter across that dinner table, still walking to work past the alley where Daniel once told me he wasn't ready to settle down. But Lucas never treated me like I was still there. He saw the person I was becoming before I did. And that terrified me, because no one had ever looked at me without asking for something in return. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy, no logo, no seal. Lucas handed it to me without a word. We were standing near the ice well, just past midnight. He looked tired, but in control. The kind of tired that comes with choice, not burden. If you're ready to stop serving someone else's dream, he said, open it. Then he walked out, no drink, no goodbye. Just left his glass, perfectly dry, and the envelope. I didn't open it until 3:14 a.m. Not because I didn't want to, because I needed to sit with the idea that maybe, finally, someone saw value in me without needing a tragedy to prove it. I sat cross-legged on the tile floor of my apartment kitchen, elbows on my knees, hands shaking a little. When I finally opened it, the contents were almost aggressively plain. No pitch, no flattery, just a heading. Group 5, Associate Immersion Placement Start Date. Term, 6 months, paid. Performance Contingent Advancement. No title, no corporate glossary. Just a line in small print. We place operators where others place optics. At the bottom was a handwritten note in pen. Solve one thing better than anyone. That's enough. Lucas Marin. It didn't feel like a job offer. It felt like a challenge. I stared at that line for hours. No one had ever offered me a way out without strings. No, if you fix your attitude. No, if you act more like your sister. No, if you just stay quiet a little longer. Just come solve problems. Be sharp. Stay sharp. The next day, I worked my usual shift without saying a word. No one knew I had a different future folded in my bag between receipts and a half-finished grocery list. I spent the weekend Googling things like how to read a P&L sheet, restaurant turnover rates, and inventory shrinkage best practices. I downloaded PDFs with titles like Front of House Operational Audits, a field manual, and highlighted them on my phone during meal breaks. I borrowed a blazer from a friend. It was too big in the shoulders, still had a dry cleaning tag from 2 years ago. The slacks I wore had a stain near the hem, but I walked into that meeting like I belonged. Lucas didn't flinch. The office was just a converted upstairs room. Above a failed jazz bar, white walls, one cork board. Half the lights didn't work. There were printouts taped to every surface, Gantt charts, annotated floor plans, tax filings, lease expiration dates. A coffee maker wheezed in the corner like it was breathing its last cup. He didn't greet me with a handshake, just pointed to the map on the wall. This one's a month from soft launch, he said. I want you there. Doing what? I asked. Watching, solving, asking why the dishwasher's quitting, and what that says about the GMI blinked. You want me to audit your own staff. Number, I want you to find the problems they've stopped noticing. I didn't ask about benefits or job titles or how I was supposed to fit into an org chart because I didn't care. This wasn't a job. It was an extraction. Out of the cycle I'd been trapped in since I was 16. Out of the family expectations I'd never signed up for. Out of the story where I was the disposable one, meant to work quietly while others got loud about their dreams. He handed me a badge and a schedule. That was it. Then, right before I left, he said, "By the way, I looked into that dinner you worked, the one where your family showed up with the guy." My throat went dry. Lucas looked at me with no sympathy, just quiet understanding. "You weren't invisible. You were just underestimated. Don't let them rewrite you." I didn't reply. But that night, in the walk-in freezer, behind the new location, the one I was now quietly embedded in, I let myself cry for exactly 7 minutes. Timed it on my phone. No noise, no heaving sobs, just clean release, the kind that empties something without leaving a mess. Then I wiped my face, clocked in, and got to work. The new location was 3 weeks behind schedule when I arrived. The staff didn't know who I was. I didn't wear a badge. I wasn't introduced in the morning huddle. I just started helping. They assumed I was a temp hire, maybe a floor assistant, maybe a scheduling intern. They didn't ask. That was my advantage. I bussed tables, folded napkins, took inventory with a clipboard that didn't belong to me. I kept my head down, but my eyes open. And within 2 shifts, I saw everything Lucas had warned me about. The general manager, Karen, was drowning in passive-aggressive emails from upper management. She barely left the back office. Her assistant manager, Luis, was the one actually running the floor, and badly. He barked at hosts, overrode orders, and forgot to clock people out when they annoyed him. Morale was brittle. The prep staff were already interviewing elsewhere. Line cooks were calling out last minute. Front-of-house servers had a group chat titled "Escape Plan." I didn't report it. I documented it, quietly. Every wasted order, every double-booked table, every passive threat whispered behind the coffee station. At night, I sat in my shared apartment and typed up notes. Not complaints, data. Not rants, patterns. I didn't text Lucas. He'd told me once, the people who rise aren't the ones who ask for permission. They just move like it's already theirs. So I moved like it was mine. When the POS system crashed one night and none of the managers were reachable, I fixed it. Didn't ask. When the fridge temp was running high, I called the vendor, scheduled the maintenance, logged the ticket. When Karen found out, she asked, "Who told you to do that?" "No one," I said. "It just needed to get done." She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. People like me weren't supposed to take initiative. We were supposed to wait, smile, and stay late when others clocked out early. But I wasn't there to blend in. I was there to learn the weak points, because Lucas didn't invest in charm. He invested in precision, and he'd sent me here for a reason. By week 4, I knew who would quit first. By week 5, I knew which wine supplier was overcharging, and which line cook was stealing salmon fillets. And by week 6, I knew how to run the place with one fewer manager, a restructured shift schedule, and a 12% drop in food waste. I didn't say any of this out loud, but Lucas noticed. One night, I found a post-it in my locker. "Numbers don't lie, neither do ghosts. Let them keep underestimating you." Lucas Marin. I folded it up and slid it into my wallet. Right behind the photo I hadn't thrown away. Daniel and me at my sister's birthday, before he got confused. Not because I missed him, because I wanted to remember the exact face of someone who thought I'd never outgrow the uniform. The envelope was elegant but understated. Thick cream paper, edges gilded faintly. No flashy logos. My name was on it in swirling gold script. Ms. Celine Carter. Inside was a single card. You're invited to the engagement party of Lily Hart. Saturday, 7 p.m., Hart Family Estate, Oakwood Drive. The same estate where I'd spent childhood holidays feeling invisible, where my laughter was always a little too loud or a little too quiet, never quite right. I stared at the card for days. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. You don't have to come, but it'd be nice if you did. No, please. No, we miss you. Just a polite reminder that I was welcome only if I behaved. I didn't call her back. I didn't reply to the RSVP. Instead, I made a plan. The morning of the party, I bought a dress. Not a gown, not a statement. A sleek black number that hugged my silhouette without shouting. Soft fabric that whispered class and control. Shoes pointed but comfortable. Hair pulled back with precision. When I stepped outside, the city was quiet, gray, thick with anticipation. My partner, Lucas, arrived in a car that gleamed like liquid midnight. He opened the door for me. His smile was calm but fierce. Like a promise, we arrived together. The driveway was lined with lights and velvet ropes. Guests in designer dresses and tuxedos filtered through the front doors. The scent of jasmine and old money hung in the air. As we stepped inside, the music dimmed slightly. Servers paused. Conversations lowered. The maitre d' met us near the entrance. He gave a slight bow. Welcome back, ma'am. The words settled in the air like a challenge. My mother's smile twitched, eyes darting to me and then to Lucas. Her grip on the champagne flute tightened. My sister's posture stiffened. Her laughter stopped mid-sentence. Lucas tightened his hold on my hand. I felt the room shift beneath my feet. I walked in with quiet purpose. No apology, no explanation, just presence. A living, breathing testament to every insult, every dismissal, every stolen opportunity. I wasn't the waitress anymore. I was the woman who owned the very place that would host their celebrations tonight. The room held its breath the moment I stepped toward the grand staircase. Whispers fluttered behind crystal glasses and beneath jeweled collars. My mother's eyes flicked to my partner, then back to me, calculating, wary. My sister's smile froze, like a mask slipping. Guests paused mid-toast, eyes drawn to the woman who once wore an apron here and now carried herself like she built the whole damn place. Lucas led me to the table. The waitstaff parted respectfully. The maitre d' bowed again as we passed. Table 7, the maitre d' said softly to the sommelier. The usual for Mrs. Carter. My mother's lips pressed thin. My sister glanced away. Throughout dinner, I kept quiet. Let their words bounce off the armor I'd forged. They tried small talk, questions coated with polite venom. So, Celine, what exactly do you do these days? How's the restaurant business? Must be exhausting. I heard you work with Lucas now. Is that true? I smiled like a blade. We build. From the ground up. They laughed nervously. At one point, my sister leaned over, voice low but sharp. I hope you know, this is my night. I looked her in the eye. It was never yours to take. She blinked. My mother's gaze hardened. Don't make this difficult. We're family. I sipped my wine slowly. Family doesn't mean loyalty. Sometimes it means being quietly forgotten. Until the forgotten owns the room. By dessert, the mood had shifted. No more laughter. No more toasts. Just the weight of all the years they ignored me. The years they dismissed my work. The years they let my sister take everything. And now, quietly, deliberately, I was here. When the waiter brought the check, Lucas gave a nod. The maitre d' smiled warmly. Allow me. The family's faces paled. They watched me stand and leave. hand in hand with the man who built this empire and who chose me to be his equal. I glanced back once. "Thank you," I said softly, "for teaching me how to serve. Now watch me own." The dining room had settled into an uneasy quiet after dessert was cleared. The crystal chandeliers above scattered fractured light across faces frozen in polite tension. My sister's smile had vanished completely. Her eyes flicked anxiously toward the exit, then downward at the untouched plate before her. Every bite she'd taken earlier felt like poison now. My mother sat stiff, fingers wrapped tightly around a slender wine glass, knuckles whitening. Her practiced grace faltered, replaced by a mask of disbelief and regret. My father's jaw clenched so tightly it looked bruised. He avoided meeting my gaze, as if looking at me would shatter the fragile illusion he'd spent years building. Then, through the murmuring crowd, a clear, steady voice rose above the din. "To Celine." The room stilled instantly. Conversations faded like a record slowing to silence. All eyes turned toward the source. Grandma Rose stood near the head of the table, glass raised high, her weathered face radiant with quiet authority. "To the woman who rose from nothing, the woman who was cast aside, forgotten, and underestimated, but who now stands here with a grace and power no one saw coming." Her gaze swept slowly, deliberately, across the room, landing on my mother and sister with unflinching clarity. "May tonight be a lesson in what it means to underestimate the quiet ones, and a reminder that the roots of strength run deep beneath the surface." A profound hush fell. No one spoke. No one dared break the moment. The toast hung in the air like a blade, sharp, cold, and cutting. The weight of decades of neglect and cruelty settled visibly in the room. Lucas squeezed my hand firmly, his eyes speaking volumes in the silence. "This is your moment." I gave a slight nod in return. My mother attempted to speak, lips moving but no sound coming out. Her voice, once commanding, was reduced to silence. My sister looked away, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes, but held back by stubborn pride. I rose slowly, glass in hand, stepping into the center of the room, raising my voice, calm and steady. "To new beginnings." The simple phrase carried the weight of every sacrifice, every betrayal, every moment of silence I'd endured. Without waiting for applause or reaction, I turned away. The soft click of my heels on the polished floor echoed as I walked to the door. Outside, the cool night air embraced me. The city lights twinkled like distant promises. Lucas opened the car door. I slid inside, the door closing softly behind me. Before we drove away, I glanced back once. The house behind us was swallowed in shadows. Inside, the family sat frozen, forever marked by the night the waitress returned as the owner. The morning after the party was quiet in a way that screamed. No calls, no texts, no apologies. Just an empty space where the old family rhythm used to be. My mother stayed in her room all day, avoiding the house's main areas. My sister kept her phone glued to her hand, refreshing social media as if drowning in a sea of strangers might erase what happened. My father tried to hold on to the last threads of control, answering work emails, organizing the garden, pretending everything was normal. But the walls heard everything. Word spread, whispers grew louder, neighbors noticed. Family friends sent awkward messages. "Are you okay?" "We heard about last night." Families complicated. Inside, the dynamic shifted. The golden child wasn't so golden anymore. The sister who once held the world in her hands found those hands trembling. Meanwhile, I stepped into a new morning. One where my phone buzzed with work calls, not from distant places, but from restaurants I helped open, investors seeking advice, and partners asking for my time. Lucas and I sat together over breakfast in our downtown loft. He handed me a tablet showing glowing reviews for the latest location. I smiled quietly. In the end, it wasn't revenge that broke the cycle. It was change. It wasn't the applause or the whispers that marked the end. It was the quiet knowledge, the subtle power of owning what once tried to own me. Weeks later, I stood in the lobby of the restaurant where it all began. The place where I once wore an apron and kept my dreams folded beneath a stained uniform. The same lobby where my family thought I'd always be just a waitress. Now, my name was on the lease, on the accounts, on the plans. I'd bought the table they said I'd never have. The phone rang, a familiar number, my mother. She said nothing at first, then quietly, "We need to talk." I didn't hesitate. I know. I hung up, turned back to the window. The city lights flickered, and I smiled. Because I wasn't asking for a seat anymore. I had built the whole table. The last time I saw my sister, she wasn't wearing that smug smile. She looked smaller, less certain. Because power wasn't about who held the boyfriend. It was about who held the future. And I was already writing mine.